Hey everybody, this is Jason with the Landlord Launch, and I want to welcome you to our Landlord Workshop going over renter's insurance and everything related to renter's insurance for Landlords 101. Basics, what it does, all those things. So we're going to jump right in it today and see what kind of good stuff we can put out there for you. Okay, so start out with some introductions here. My name's Jason Adair. So I've been in property management since 2001. Started out as a on-site property manager for a multifamily firm. Bounced around from a couple different communities, going in, cleaning them up, and then they would take me to another troubled property where I would go and repeat, and had a lot of fun doing that. It kept me on my toes and put a lot of variety in my day. So that's how I started out. 2004 opened up a property management firm, a single family property management firm with a business partner, which was actually my boss at the time with the multifamily residential. We decided to go a different route and manage single family homes. We ultimately ended up managing both single family and multifamily, but a majority of it was single family. We ended up purchasing, owning, and operating quite a few single family and multifamily units ourselves, so we got to see it from both ends of the table. Along the way, earned my degree in just a business administration, a bachelor's with real estate management. Earned my certified property manager designation through IREM, which is more multifamily based, but it was a pretty intense program that I had to go through. Learned quite a lot of good things there, and then relocated to Arizona. Well, it'd be about 2019, about 4 years ago as of the recording of this workshop. But from that point, went back into the multifamily sphere and kind of did more leadership, regional leadership, asset management type roles for larger property management firms, which manage, 10, 15, 20,000 unit firms over, 3, 4, 5, 6 states, and did that for about 3 or 4 years before moving into construction management and then, starting the Landlord Launch and kind of getting back to the roots here. So that is a little bit about me. I hope that is helpful. Well, so what we're going to be covering today, of course, is renter's insurance, what renter's insurance is, what it does, what it does not do, why I think that renter's insurance should be required for all, or landlords should require renter's insurance for all of their tenants. Some of the ways that we need to or can manage the renter's insurance, keeping track of it, some of the things we need to put in place so that we can get the proper notifications, and then, of course, any resources that I can give to help along the way in terms of managing renter's insurance and some of the things that we can do and places we can go to get more information when we need that. Okay, so what is renter's insurance? So renter's insurance is an insurance policy. It's a tenant-based insurance policy, which means it's their responsibility to get it. And on its surface, it is designed to cover the personal property of the tenant, their stuff, their belongings, the things that they've invested in. And of course, that policy, as you'll see, kind of goes into some other deals. It is designed to cover losses due to theft, any destruction. It covers the unintentional destruction of some of the landlord's property. It does provide some protection for liability and injuries caused by tenant carelessness, things that they've done. It will not cover landlord negligence, and is designed to cover things that are damage to their personal property due to natural disasters I would say natural disasters and things that are out of their control, like maybe if they're in an apartment community, another tenant has a fire and it smokes out their apartment or burns their apartment. It covers some of the things along those lines. Now, some of the things that renter's insurance does not do. It does not cover damage to the property, the landlord's property, the structure, and home, whether it's apartment or a single family, due to natural disasters, fires, any type of mechanical malfunction. So, if hot water heater floods out, or there's a sewer line break or something along those lines. It does not cover intentional tenant damage. So if they're going through and just punching holes in the walls or destroying doors, any of that, any of that stuff that's designed to be just kind of very intentional, bad tenant behavior type stuff, it doesn't cover that. And it doesn't cover the normal wear and tear of the property, the carpet, the paint, things along those lines. So again, it's very much a tenant-based policy designed to protect tenants and their belongings. So if it is designed to cover tenant belongings and primarily benefit to them, is why should we require it? Why do we care? Well, first and foremost, it does help protect us from liability, and maybe sometimes directly, but a lot of ways indirectly. So with these policies, it allows claimants to recover damages. And so think about it like this. If a friend of the tenant comes onto the property, slips and falls due to something that the tenant did, and the person has no one to go after, they're going to go after the landlord. By having this type of policy in place, it kind of provides an extra buffer in there to help protect us from that liability to recover those damages, the medical bills, and so forth. It's also going to help keep tenants in place if scratch that. So if this policy is primarily designed for the benefit of the tenant, why should landlords require renter's insurance on their home? Well, what it does is it helps protect our investments, the landlord's investments, from liability, from damage, things along those lines. So one of the things it does is allows us to recover damages. So for example, if there's an unintentional kitchen fire and it damages, the smoke and fire damages the walls of the cabinets, that renter's insurance policy in a lot of cases will step up and help cover that stuff, so it doesn't, one, hit our policy, or at the very least reduces our liability in that and how much we have to pay or how much hits our actual insurance. It's going to help keep tenants in place. So accidents do happen, but some of those accidents lead to a situation where they have to find another place to live temporarily until we get those repairs done. Another thing is if they have to spend their money on replacing their items. If they have to spend their money on items to replace that stuff, that's less money that they get paid towards their rents and their bills and things along those lines. So in that respect, it frees up their cash flow to make sure they continue paying their bills, which will, again, help keep them in place, especially if it's tenant that we want to retain. It reduces the landlord exposure to liability claims. So let's say a friend of the tenant comes on the property, maybe there's toys all over the yard or the house, and the tenant's friends hits something, slips and falls, and breaks their leg. Well, if the tenant doesn't have any protection in place, that person's going to go after whoever they can go after, and a lot of times they'll bring the landlord into that suit. Will they win? Most likely not, but that's not the expensive part. The expensive part is defending that type of stuff. So by putting that policy in front of that and giving that a direction, a target for that person to go after, it keeps the target off the landlord's back. And which brings my next point. If the tenant has no protection, the landlord is the next biggest target. Everybody thinks landlords have all kinds of money because they own this property and so forth. And sometimes that's true, but is that fair? No. Should the landlord be the target? No, especially if it hasn't been anything that they've done or caused of that. But the sad fact is that the landlord will be drawn into the lawsuit because perception-wise, the landlord has more money and more to go after than the tenant. And they may bring the tenant and the landlord in as well. But that renter's insurance policy is going to create that buffer. It's going to get in front. It's going to kind of like slide in between the landlord to help cover those expenses and maybe mitigate those before it ever actually reaches the landlord. I mean, because if all the medical bills are paid by that renter's insurance policy or whatever the case may be, there's no reason to go after the landlord after that. So it's a good buffer. And again, like I said before, it's the defense against the claim in a lot of cases that makes this expensive. It's the attorneys and stuff that the landlord has to pay for that really hurt. So if there is a renter's insurance policy that is going to take care of some of that expense, is going to cover some of that stuff, and it hits the renter's insurance policy, that's just extra liability the landlord doesn't even have to worry about. Okay, so now let's talk exclusively to the tenant's personal property. Why is it in the landlord's best interest that the tenant's personal property is covered? And I alluded to a little bit of this previously, but we got a typo there. Replacing the lost personal property costs money, and if that tenant is spending that money replacing those items, whether they're dishes or whether there's furniture or whether it's clothes or whatever the case may be, that's going to be less money for them to pay for bills, hence less money to pay rent. And sometimes what this may cause is a situation where the tenant feels, whether it's right or wrong, that they have no choice to move because they can no longer afford rent because now they have to pay for all this stuff. If you have a renter's insurance policy that comes in and says, okay, we're going to take care of all this stuff, we're going to replace your clothes, we're going to replace your dishes, we're going to take care of the damages to the kitchen, to the fire, or whatever the case may be, then we can keep good potential tenants in place while this stuff is taken care of and why they don't have to worry about those excess funds going out the door, and helps just keeps them in place because it's still going to be vacancy on our side. And if on the landlord side we have a good policy, perhaps we have some coverage to take care of some of the lost rents due to those types of things. But regardless, if it's a good tenant and we want to keep them in place, I don't want to compound the losses that we're already dealing with and compound it with vacancy loss after everything's all put back together. And we have to wait, another couple weeks to a month to 2 months to get somebody else back in there to get income going again. So that's why it's important to try to make sure that the tenant's personal property is covered so it doesn't become a detriment in their ability to pay rent to you. So if the damage was caused by something that was outside of the tenant's control, for example, fire, flood, natural disaster, even theft, things along those lines, mechanical malfunction, if the tenant feels that there is no recourse and they're in a desperate position and they have to figure out how to get this stuff replaced, and there is a perception that somehow or another that even that some of the stuff, especially like with mechanical malfunction or a theft, if perhaps we didn't have a deadbolt on the door. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of reaching there, but if there's some sort of perception that they can twist this into the landlord's fault and they need to recover their items, they may try to bring that landlord into the suit. So let's use an example of a hot water heater flooding. Can the landlord control that? Maybe to a certain degree. I mean, if they're doing preventative maintenance and when it's recommended to replace, that type of stuff, or a sewer line break may be a better example. But whatever the case, let's say the thing floods and ruins a bunch of their furniture and TV stands, and maybe there was some iPads on the ground and that all got ruined. They don't have renter's insurance. Well, if this was technically not their fault and the fault of the landlord, then they may try to sue to cover that. Now, you may in your lease have terms and criteria in there stating that they're responsible to have renter's insurance to cover that stuff, but depending on where you're at with jurisdictions, what judge hears this, they may not be interested in that, and they may say it may be a very pro-tenant state, pro-tenant court system, and they may say that, hey, the landlord was it's not the tenant's fault, it's something the landlord should have seen coming. It's your responsibility to pay for the personal property that was damaged since it was your fault, and it could have been a short in the stove. It could have been a fridge going out, and they just got done, stocking it up with groceries and unlimited income, and now they want $150 to replace their groceries. Normally, renter's insurance could possibly cover stuff like that, but now you may be on the hook up for it. So that's another reason why I think it's important that we care about the tenant's personal property being covered, is because, again, if it isn't covered and we just say, tough luck, it's your deal, that's going to affect us, because at the end of the day, our goal, what we want, is to have them pay rent. And if we do things or say things or just basically like tough luck, it's on you. It's when it comes down to making decisions, if we are in a position where we do not care, it's going to be very easy for them to say, well, listen, this is your fault, you need to take care of this, and then come after us. And heck, they may win on some of that stuff too, depending on where they are at. Injuries. We talked about this, touched on this a little bit ago as well. Injuries that may occur on the property. Again, the landlord is a good target. The perception is that landlords have money, and sometimes if that person is like friends, well, I mean, obviously if they're friends with the tenant and they come on, then perhaps they're more likely to go after the big bad landlord that they don't know, as opposed to their buddy that they are visiting that they do know and they don't want to hurt. So that policy may step in and help cover some of that stuff. It can cover medical bills. It can cover actually the cost of the legal defense for the tenant as well. So if somebody comes on, gets injured, does go after the tenant, once again, if their legal expenses are covered and there's an attorney involved protecting them and they're not having to pay out of their own pocket, that means that they're not going to struggle as much with paying the bills, paying the rent, and things along those lines. Another common area, I would say, a good example would be for dog bites. Now, there are going to be some exceptions, and this is actually why insurance companies a lot of times have dog restriction breeds in there, and they may not be covered on some of that stuff. So that is also kind of a good reason why some landlords, depending if your area will allow it, you should really take a look at if there are any restricted breeds out there that you want on your screening criteria, because let's just say that, well, the pit bull right now is an easy dog to pick on. So we'll just pick on them for this example. But let's just say you allow pit bulls and that pit bull attacks, bites somebody, mauls somebody, and that tenant doesn't have any ability to help that family, that kid, or that person that got attacked by that pit bull. If you allow that pit bull on the property, they may have a claim against you as a landlord for allowing them to put a vicious breed on the property that maybe the house is near a school. I mean, I don't know, whatever. I mean, a good attorney is going to find a way to drag you into it. But if you have that in your screening criteria and you don't allow that, and then that the insurance company is allowing it, it's very likely that that tenant's not going to have that type of animal there. But if they do, and if they have an animal that does attack and their insurance policy covers it, that means that that person who gets attacked or needs medical attention or so forth is going to have somewhere to go after in terms of getting their costs taken care of. And if the tenant doesn't have it, guess what? They're probably going to come after the landlord. They're going to try to find a way to do it. And if they come after the landlord, it's not just going to be medical expenses. It's going to be damages and anything else they can get their hands on. So very good common reason right there is on the liability side. Our example is dog bites and covering the costs of those. Damage to the rental property. So in certain cases, not all cases, and it's going to depend a little bit on the policy as well in the area that you're in, but if the tenant causes unintentional damage, let's just say kitchen fire is a good one. If it's unintentional, there's no negligence, no trying to cause damage on purpose, I guess is what I'm trying to trying to say intentional, then that policy may help cover the repairs of that kitchen fire. So again, the smoke damage to the walls, the painting, the flooring replacement, maybe the appliance replacements, the cabinets, things along those lines. And I would imagine that depending on the limits of that policy, if that exceeds if the damage exceeds the amount of money that that policy will cover, another thing where that renter's insurance policy may come in and help the landlord on is that if any of that money if any of that has to be covered by the landlord's insurance policy, the landlord typically has a deductible that they have to cover, and those are usually higher. They're usually not $250. You know what I mean? It could be $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 in some cases, depending on the landlord, how many properties they have, and what their comfort level is with risk. That renter's insurance policy may come in and cover that landlord's deductible as well. As part of their coverage options. The other thing too is that oftentimes tenants will be the one that cause damages, and that policy can come in and then cover that damage as well. So I mean, if let's just say I don't know, let's just say I don't even want party's not a great example, but let's just say that they have a friend over, that friend loses their temper and smashes holes in the wall or breaks a window out or whatever else and storms off. Well, of course, they're going to want to call the cops and want to file a police report and all that stuff, but some policies will actually cover to have that taken care of, and therefore, one, the tenant doesn't have to pay for it. If the tenant doesn't have to pay for it, then that means they have more ability to pay their rent and their bills to you and the other debtors that they have. And then the other thing is if the renter doesn't have that money to pay for that, usually like if a window's knocked out, a landlord's going to have to take care of it. I mean, they're going to have to board it up, they have to get the window replaced. And if the landlord doesn't pay you back, then you're just out that money. Yeah, you can, or the tenant doesn't pay you back. Yeah, you can go after them. But again, we all know the likelihood of collecting some of that stuff, especially if they've decided to leave the home, is very, very difficult. So again, it's just a way to increase your chances and ability to make sure that the damages are covered in situations that are not necessarily the landlord's responsibility. So in some areas, it is required that for certain things that the landlord has to cover the cost of relocation. Now this may mean paying for the movers or deposits, moving expenses, like if a house natural disaster comes through, wipes out a house, or there's a short or something, it's a landlord responsibility that causes the house to be, or apartment, condo, whatever, to be uninhabitable, may have to pay for their moving expenses, which can get quite expensive because they're gonna want every convenience on that as well, and a landlord will, in those cases, they'll have to take care of it. So let's say a kitchen fire goes up and you need 2 to 3 weeks to get the remodeling done, and you want to keep those tenants in place. The next thing that this may help with is that it will cover the cost of living expenses, potentially, like hotel and food and things along those lines, while you get your home put back together to get them back in. Sure, you're not going to collect rent for that period of time. You could have a clause in your landlord policy that takes care of those lost rents, but their policy is not going to take care of the rents. But it could help pay for some of those living and relocation expenses, while it buys you enough time to get the home put back together to put those tenants back in, which means you don't have to release them from their lease. You don't have to pay for those relocation expenses to put them somewhere else, and then you don't have the additional vacancy loss, the 2, 3, 4 weeks, 2 months, whatever it is, after you get the home put back together. So again, another benefit of the renter's insurance policy being in place. Let's see here. Okay, so when we require renter's insurance, there's some things that we can do, some things that we can set up, some things I recommend you do. And first and foremost is make it a requirement to add yourself as either an interested party, sometimes as an additional insured, and really this shows up on the certificate of insurance that you get, which shows the proof and the coverages of the policy. And what that does is if there is a lapse in the insurance policy, the landlord will actually get a notification stating, hey, this policy is done, they stop paying, it's no longer enforced, whatever the case may be. Because what we're going to want to do is, if we're requiring renter's insurance, then we're going to want to be able to monitor that it is in effect. And this is an easy way to get those notifications if anything were to ever happen to the policy. Now, there are some policies out there where the landlord can actually file the claim on a policy. So if the renter is not doing it or dragging their feet or whatever else, or the landlord just wants to be in a little more control, they can file the claim on the property saying this tenant, caused a kitchen fire, here's the police fire reports, whatever you need, and file that claim and get that going on behalf of the tenant and yourself, really, because you're trying to collect that. And then if another thing that can happen is if there's a renter's insurance claim, technically you're supposed to notify your insurance carrier too. So they may go after that insurance and subrogate. So that's kind of, in effect, the same kind of thing, to where your insurance company is going to go deal with all that stuff for you. But some policies allow you to file that claim, and if you have that option, then I would absolutely take advantage of it. But again, monitor that expiration date. Because again, you want to make sure this is enforced. You want to make sure that they have something in place. Because if something if it lapses and something happens and you're not covered, then it's kind of pointless. Make sure to list this as a requirement on your screening criteria. So before they even sign their lease, before they even look at the home, or before they fill out the application and apply for it, they know that this is going to be a requirement, no ifs, ands, and buts, that they have to have renter's insurance as part of the conditions of living in your home. Make sure that is listed out on the lease agreement. Make sure the terms are listed out there. You can actually charge a fee in a lot of places for lapsed insurance. There's actually, I know this isn't the only insurance company that does it, but on the multifamily side, we worked with a company called ePremium, ePremium Insurance, and they set it up to make it really easy for the tenant to sign up for renter's insurance. But what they also did was they set it up to where we built the verbiage into the lease agreement, and if that renter's insurance policy lapsed, then we could go to ePremium and we could put our landlord version of that in place. Now, this landlord version did not cover the tenant's contents, but what it did cover was any damages that were to the property that would have normally been caused by or covered by renter's insurance. Like, we'll just use the classic kitchen fire, maybe the dog bite scenario, some of those liability coverages, and then we would charge them a fee, and we would charge them like $50 a month, $60 a month, something, and it was actually more expensive than what it cost us, and it wasn't because we were trying to make money. We wanted to make it more expensive than what it cost not only us, but the tenant, just to have the renter's insurance policy in place. Because a lot of times, renter's insurance is generally a pretty cheap insurance to have in place. So $20, $30, can get you some really good coverage. And if we're charging $50 a month that they had to pay, that got automatically charged to their account, and they got no benefit from it whatsoever in terms of content coverage or any of that other stuff, they got that coverage in place really quick, because again, $50 or $20, and what's more beneficial to them? If you're going to pay it anyway, you might as well pay cheaper, and you might as well get the benefit of it. So that's one of the reasons we did that, and it was extremely effective in that regards. Okay, so as part of this workshop, down in the resource section below, we've got some resources for you. The first one is going to be the Renter's Insurance Provider Cheat Sheet. Now again, this is just a sheet, and it has 9 or 12 companies who provide renter's insurance. All you have to do is click on the icon, the logo of the company. It's a PDF document. All you have to do is click on there, and it'll take you to their website, to their renter's insurance, and you can jump on there. You can look for quotes. You can see what the costs are. You can compare between the two, and these are some of the more common ones. I'm sure there's definitely more companies out there that offer renter's insurance. These are going to be more the national type companies. You can absolutely go to your local insurance agents. Almost everybody offers this type of coverage, but this is just a place where you can start looking. You can use this as a handout to your tenants if you want to. You can email it to them and say, hey, listen, here's some resources for you to go get renter's insurance in place. And if you have a company that you like to work with, someone that works with landlords well, then put their information in instead of this flyer. Find that company and say, hey, listen, if you don't have anybody, check these guys out. They give good rates and so forth. And then the companies that work well with landlords are usually the companies I like to work with as well, because it makes claims easy, communications easy. And they're not necessarily that they're landlord friendly. They don't lean one way towards the other on the claims, but they're open to communicating with the landlord and know the kind of landlord's needs and how to help them as much as they help the tenants as well. I have some links in here too to landlord tenant laws throughout the different states. The links provided in some of these, depending on your state, is not just landlord tenant laws. Sometimes on some of these links it has information about what you can and cannot do on renter's insurance, and all kinds of different resources that are state specific. It's not just landlord tenant laws. So some of these have some great resources on renter's insurance as well, because some states you have to be careful about the verbiage. Some states have specific requirements and restrictions on those types of policies that it'd be good for a landlord to know. So I thought that would be a good resource for you as well. Check out our Facebook community. Link is down there as well. Again, it's free to join. As of the recording of this video, we're a little over 1,000 members. Great place to ask questions, especially about state-specific stuff, because I've managed in a lot of states, but for example, I've never been in New York. I've never been in California. I've never managed in Michigan. If you're one from those states that I haven't been in, I can get you a lot of good information. But if you have state-specific questions and how to work through certain experiences, there are people from these states in this group, and I foresee it's growing rapidly. So I foresee before too long that there's going to be members from about every state. They can, at the very least, tell you what their experience was like if you're running into a situation, and kind of help guide or point you in the right direction on some of the things that you need to do and some of the directions that you could go, or some ways to help in your situation, whatever that may be. And then finally, if you are not a member of the Landlord Launch program, you should check that out as well. A little shameless self-plug there, but it's a monthly membership where you have access to all the landlord workshops, including this one. The daily and weekly content we post. We have an amazing forums vault where people contribute, there's a collection of forums, landlord-related forums, but it grows because people contribute forms that they use along the way that we may not have, especially state-specific stuff. But there's all kinds of resources that are involved in this. Check it out, and if it's a good fit, great. If not a big deal either. But it's very cost-effective, and I personally think that it's a great resource for anybody who is learning, one, to be a landlord, and two, just having the resources as a current landlord, because our mission truly is to help landlords self-manage their property. So that is what we have for the renter's insurance overview, this little workshop here. A quick recap here. Again, we looked at what renter's insurance is, what it covers. Again, personal property, some liability, some damages to our property, what it doesn't cover, which is primarily the stuff that is covered in our landlord policy, if nothing else. We went over a number of reasons why the landlord should require a renter's insurance, and really the centralized theme there is put something in place between that lawsuit, that claim, and the landlord, so that they're hitting that first, and hopefully they never get to us, get to our insurance policy. It's providing that buffer. Some ways to kind of manage that insurance, renter's insurance program in terms of monitoring the expiration date. You can again add that additional insured or interested party on there. Another thing you can do is just simply pop a reminder on your own Outlook calendar or whatever, saying, hey, this person's renter's insurance is going to expire on this date, and that way you have something to follow up on. And then, of course, the resources that we just went over, which include the insurance cheat sheet, the landlord tenant law links, the Facebook support group, and then, of course, the Landlord Launch program. If that's something you're interested in, please go check that out. So that's it. That is the end of the presentation today, this Landlord Renters Insurance Workshop. I hope this has been helpful. Let me click back here. Hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I'm more than happy to help where I can help. Check out those resources. And then, download some of those forms, put some of these things into place into your business, and I hope it helps. So, thank you once again for watching the Renters Insurance Workshop, for visiting us here at the Landlord Launch, and we will see you next time.